morning, good afternoon, good evening. I've said on this platform that Zimbabwe is a failed state, and the root cause of it is the failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections. The failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections seems to be a problem, not only in Zimbabwe, but in many other African countries. Today, as we talk, the people of Tanzania are going through their election process. And it looks like that whole election process has been marred by vote rigging and all other political machinations that has forced the people to go onto the street. We just listened to a video clip of the violence in Tanzania. Ben, welcome to the program. This is an all too familiar occurrence, yeah?
I have to agree with you there. I mean, let's be practical here. You are seeing, from the first image that you shared, you are seeing a president who is sitting, or engaging a known criminal, somebody who was also tasked to supply, election equipment and stationary etc for Zimbabwean government, and that election process failed the test, not only the local test but even the international test. And you fast forward again, you go to the part where you also went and handled equipment and stationary again in Mozambique, Namibia. All those elections were marred with violence and vote rigging allegations. And now you are finding he's gone further up, he is now in Tanzania up there. And again, the trail has followed him, It's obvious. There is something wrong when you find a president inviting failure and inviting chaos to preside over their elections. You know, it's bound to happen. Chaos follows the guy. Rigging is within ZANU PF DNA, and he is a ZANU PF, a known ZANU PF member. So there's no question about it. Africa has a problem of rigging and rigged elections.
Yes, it is. It is tragic. I think the disappointing thing is, even after 45 years, in the case of Zimbabwe, of independence, we still haven't come up with a formula for making sure elections are free, fair, and credible. We need to emphasize this point. Free, fair, and credible elections, the essence of it is that you are giving all Zimbabweans or all Tanzanians a meaningful say in the governance of the country. Why that is proven to be a bridge too far beggars belief. Other African countries have done it, and we've got to give credit where credit is due. Botswana, they've always managed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. The leaders themselves have accepted the essence that every citizen has a right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. And that has never been an issue. And South Africa has done the same thing. Since 1994, South Africa has managed to hold free, fair, and credible elections again and again because the ANC leaders and the opposition leaders, they've all grasped the idea that all the citizens have the right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. Our problem in Zimbabwe and other African countries is that we started with the ruling elite who believe they have the divine right to rule the country. And hence the reason why we've gone round and round in circles. ZANU-PF have always believed that they have the right to rig elections and stay in power at all costs. And unfortunately, the opposition has not learned anything. Because as much as the people elected them to implement the democratic reforms to stop the case of rigged elections, MDC have failed to implement even one token reform in 25 years on the political stage, including the 5 years in the GNU. That is the tragedy of Africa. Ben.
And the one important thing that we need to mention is that, we have sold ourselves short as the citizens of Africa. We believe it is our right to an election, to vote, no matter if the election is free, fair, and credible or not. And our leaders have noticed this. Just let them vote. It doesn't matter even if you count them accurate, as long as they voted and they believe they had something to do with the outcome. It's okay. And I believe we have settled for that. We can see rigging happening way before the actual election. For Zimbabwe's case, we could see FARS going about in rural areas, forcing people, to register in their books and so forth, and frog march them to various meetings and so forth. In Mozambique, we saw Zimbabweans going to go and get national IDs in Mozambique heading up to the election. You know, we have seen criminals now like Chivayo, associating with various presidents as we are heading towards election time. But nobody says anything. It's okay as long as we are going to vote. We have sold ourselves short. And unfortunately, the enemy has seen and has since known that we are willing participants no matter what. And they know that they can get away with it easy. So we are our worst enemy right now. But I'm also glad the people of Tanzania, instead of just going to vote like any other vote, election day, they took to the streets. This is what needs to be done. We want free, fair, and credible election, not just an election. Free, fair, credible election. Without that, there would be no voting. That's it.
I think the other tragedy that must be mentioned here, particularly as concern Zimbabwe, is that the people themselves have been conned into believing the lie that they can win rigged elections. And this has been at the heart of our problem. Because if you participate in your millions, you cannot, at the end of the day, turn around and say, oh, the elections were rigged. Because we warned, if you participate, you are giving the process legitimacy. And the people themselves have been conned into believing that they can win rigged elections. It's only when the process is shown to have been flawed and the elections rigged that they go onto the street. We have got this mentality of thinking that we will participate, give the regime legitimacy, and then we can remove it by street protests. It doesn't work out that way. We have got everything back to front. If you participate in a rigged process because you believe Chamisa has plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, then if it turns out that he has not done so, you've got to accept the result. That is the principle that you've got to work with. Why Zimbabweans have been conned into believing these idiotic lies about the opposition winning rigged elections is at the heart of our problem. If the people stand up and say, no, we want free, fair, and credible elections, we are not going to participate in flawed elections, and only for the opposition to say soon after the voting is done, oh, ZANU-PF is rigged. The very thing that they had said would not happen. Because that is the reason why, as much as SADC and the AU condemned 2023 elections, they could not go the extra mile and deny ZANU-PF legitimacy as they did in 2008, because millions of Zimbabweans had participated in those flawed elections. And we are talking about here millions of opposition supporters that participated in those flawed elections. The emphasis is, if you participate you cannot complain afterwards. The other aspect I wanted to talk about is a very familiar one to many Zimbabweans. How once a leader has been elected into office, they want to hang on. Here is a clip of President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda trying to do just that.
I have few projects that I want to finish.
What? Africa?
This is the last time I'm vying for president in Uganda. I will never vie again after 2026. So I urge all Ugandans to come out in large numbers and vote for me for the very last time. I have few projects that I want to finish.
What? Africa?
This is the last time I'm vying for president in Uganda. I will never vie again after 2026. So
What do you say to that one, Ben? After 40 years, he still has a few projects that he wants to complete.
I mean, it's laughable. You have had for decades. That's basically a lifetime. You could have achieved what needed to be achieved. And then even if we were to measure your progress over 40 years, I mean, look, it's 2 terms for me, is more than enough. 10 years for you to implement your ideas and try and see them through, and move on. You need a fresh pair of eyes, a fresh set of brains. There's nothing that you could bring about, in the last term that you couldn't do in 40 years. It's just, I think it's just, it sums up our African leaders who have held on to power until in the end they've met disgraceful exits. The likes of Mugabe, it's not nice when an elderly person is treated, that way. But when you then look down to it, you deserved it because you held on to the power for too long. And it's as if now you begin to thought it is your birthright that you should be a president and nobody else. It's a sad outcome, but that is the reality that we must face in Africa, that it's either cool or you die in that position.
I think the other interesting aspect here that must be emphasized, that invariably our friend Museveni has been in power now for 40 years. And the first election or second one were free, fair, and credible, the subsequent ones were not. These are individuals who have been rigging elections. And in the case of Uganda, Museveni, soon after he got his legs under the table, he saw to it that there was no viable opposition parties could be formed. So in other ways, he created de facto one-party state. This is exactly what we have in Zimbabwe. ZANU-PF has been in power since 1980. They've been rigging elections to stay in power. all that period. And even when Mnangagwa staged the coup in 2017, he promised that he was going to hold free, fair, and credible elections. He has stayed in power by rigging elections. This is a cycle that has been repeating itself. 2023, Mnangagwa rigged the 2023 elections. Both the regional body, SADC, and the continental body, AU, condemned those elections. And what did he say? He turned around and said he didn't care. And now the same individual has been blackmailing, bribing, all manner of dirty tricks to make sure that he stays in power beyond the stated limit of 2028. This is a tragedy of Africa. Here he is insisting that he doesn't care, that the AU and the SADC election observers condemned Zimbabwe's 2023 elections.
Vana vakatuka ZANU-PF kana ini ndonyanyisa kufara kuita zvakanaka. Ukavona vavengi vako vachikurumbidza unenge uchikanganisa. Ukavona vachiti ZANU-PF yakaipa, farai. You are doing great things for your country. Hongu takaita maelections edu kuna vamwe vaitaura zvisina musoro zvikanzi maelections anofamba zvakanaka ndezvavo.
Then there's our guys.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to look at the bigger picture, of Africa itself. We now have a situation where after 40 years of leadership, of being president, you still want to go on. We have a situation in Cameroon where a 92-year-old man has just won an election. In your mind, it's baffling to say, surely at 92 years, what do you have to offer a new digital world? Things have changed so much. I don't think you are, you're capable of even keeping up with the trend of what is happening. The world is moving so fast. Surely there has to be younger, people that could take the torch on. We have the likes of Mugabe, who had to get booted out through a military coup, that had served for years. Now we have everywhere, left, right, and center, thugs are the ones that are running elections. There is fights about election disputes almost everywhere in Africa. This has become us. This is what, defines us. Failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections years after our independence. I would summarize this as Africa is a complete failure, except for a few, good apples that might also get spoiled by the rest of the rotten ones if not careful. We really have to look ourselves in the mirror, and take a very good hard look. Is this the trend that we want to continue going into the future? Is this a legacy that we want to be remembered for holding on to power for 40 years and asking for 5 more to finish a few little things, to continue rigging elections, and it doesn't matter to everybody else as long as I get my way, and your family will be remembered as villains for who they truly are? It's a question to leadership. It's a question to us ourselves as the citizens that we need to seriously think about and eventually answer. Thank you.
My final remark is to remind Zimbabweans that on Tuesday, Emmerson Mnangagwa gave his State of the Nation address. In it, he did not even mention one political reform that he was implementing. In other words, as much as 2023 elections were flawed and illegal, he has no intention of implementing any reforms to make sure that 2028 will be different. This is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. What happened in 2023 is going to be repeated in 2028. We are not going to stop ZANU-PF rigging 2028 elections. And ZANU-PF is counting on the usual suspects, conning as many people as possible to participate in the 2028 elections, to give the process legitimacy. I believe this ED 2030 has been thrown in as a decoy. Soon after the 2023 elections, before the dust had even settled, Mnangagwa was talking about extending his rule in 2028. Why? You've not even served a month of your five-year term. He did that deliberately. He knew that he had rigged 2023 elections, and he didn't want the nation to be talking about it. And so by throwing this in, he was like throwing a thigh bone to a puppy. He knows that the puppy is not going to chew that bone, but it will be so fascinated by it, it will be licking it and forgetting the real issues. The real issue, the important business for the people of Zimbabwe is and still remains implementing the democratic reforms so that we've got free, fair, and credible elections. That is the bottom line. It is a pity that the people of Zimbabwe are easily sidetracked, distracted, conned. But if we go into 2028 elections with no reforms implemented, and we make the mistake of participating in those flawed elections, then we should know that we've given ZANU-PF legitimacy. To those people who believe that ED 2030 is the big issue, I ask you to think about it. Even if you succeed in stopping ED extending his rule, in 2028. You stop him amending the constitution. If ZANU-PF rigs the 2028 elections, the party will have a ZANU-PF president. The nation will have a ZANU-PF dictator. So all we'll have succeeded in doing is stopping Mnangagwa ruling beyond 2028, but failing to stop a ZANU-PF dictator ruling beyond 2028. No doubt the people will go on the street and protest that the elections were rigged. But to no avail. If we deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy in 2028 by refusing to participate in flawed elections, it doesn't matter, even if Mnangagwa got his party to endorse that he can stay in power beyond 2028. If Zimbabwe is forced into another GNU, the new GNU will not accept Mnangagwa. That is the truth. That is the point that we should be fighting for. After 45 years of rigged elections, we should be smart enough to realize the sheer futility of participating in flawed elections and demonstrating the day after that the elections were rigged. Think about it. Thank you very much, those who were able to join us. And sorry about tonight, we were delayed with some technical problems. But you can join us again tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Sorry, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time, 6 o'clock in UK time. And on Saturday and Sunday, we would like you to join us and we'll have an open discussion. And you are welcome to use the link at the bottom of your screen there. The link will not change. We'll use the same link on Saturday and Sunday, 6 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time for a discussion. And that link will be used every week from now on. We hope you'll be able to join us at one point in these discussions. Thank you very much again for joining us tonight. Have a good night.